Beloved listeners, we want you to know that this episode includes mentions of sexual assault and sexual violence. So if that is not for you today, then come back to this episode at a future time. We love you.
Yeah. We love y'all.
I'm Autumn Brown, front woman of the soul pop band Autumn, a theologian, a mother of dragons, and a healing justice facilitator for social movements living on Dakota and Anishinaabe land, currently known as Minneapolis from memory.
Pretty good. And I'm Asia Marie Brown, a luscious Black queer witch writer, auntie, an apocalyptic love scholar, a public conversationalist, and a gardener of healing ideas. I live in the land of the Occaneechi, Shikori, Sparure, Tuscarora, Eno, and Lumbee peoples, currently known as Durham.
And this is How to Survive the End of the World,
our podcast about learning from apocalypse with grace, rigor, and say it with me, curiosity!
As a reminder, we have no ads. We are 100% listener supported.
And if you're listening to this, you're a listener. So go on over to our Patreon and sign up for exclusive content.
Good morning,
Hello,
sister. Good morning.
I'm so proud to know you.
I'm so happy to know you. I'm so happy we're doing a sister show, just the two of us.
Just a sister show. It's a sister show, everybody. Get ready. Buckle up.
It's going to be crazy.
Well, it's not going to be that crazy because we're doing an Ask Us Anything. So we send out a little note to our patrons. That's another patron benefit, is that you get to ask us questions directly. And we have a lot. So we're just going to get into it and spend a little time there. But before we actually jump into that, sister, how are you?
Well, I'll be honest. I've been having diarrhea for several days.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, it's something that happens sometimes if I ingest the wrong thing, and I did.
Do you mean like food poisoning?
No, I'm just so sensitive. My body is just like sensitive. My body's like, no, we don't know how to do that.
No, we didn't like that.
We don't know how to do that. And none of the
things. We protest.
None of the bacteria, nobody in here knows what to do with that. So send it through.
We're just going to send it through as quickly as we can with as much water as possible. Get that where that doesn't go here. We cannot get nutrients from that. No. Oh, gosh. I'm so sorry. You know, I've been having my bouts of food poisoning and other things. And
it's the worst.
I do think that, like, this is also, like, living in this time where, like, so many different safety things have been, like, taken away or, like, health things. I just feel like there's, like, not as much, like, care being given to like the food that's coming through to people now.
I mean,
because I'm like,
the system is crumbling.
It's crumbling, yes. And I'm like, oh, you can't take that lettuce for granted, people.
No, really, anyway. Extra 3 times wash it. But all that is to say, so I'm having a little bit of, you know, I'm waking up in the morning.
Is it going to happen like during the conversation?
No, I think I've cleared it for them. It seems to also be like in the morning.
Interesting.
Yeah. So
that's nice. That's convenient.
But I think like I'm so sensitive and my sleep hygiene has been really off for the last few weeks. I've been like staying up way too late. And so it's all connected. So I'm just feeling my little, sensitive feelings.
Yeah. Bubble guts.
Bubble gut brown. But.
Speaking of but.
But I am excited because this weekend is, as you know, my youngest child is a volleyball player. Yes, and she has her last tournament of the season this weekend, and it's a travel tournament. So we get to go stay in a hotel for 2 nights and be
fancy.
Yeah, and just be like, I get to be in sports mom mode, which is one of my favorite hats that I wear.
I bet she's so like pro hotel too.
She loves it. Honestly, I do too. It's like a little vacation.
It's like a little vacation, but I feel like she's the kind of person who'd be like, actually put on the robe and the slippers or like whatever, I'm in a hotel.
What's really funny about doing the volleyball trip specifically is that like, so she and her team really, really like cohered this season.
Oh yeah.
And so the girls will migrate at night from room to room, like any room where the parents will let them in. They will just go from room to room at night in the hotel. And it's just like, so I was just like minding my own business. The last time we did a travel tournament, I'm just like in my room, minding my own business. And suddenly I hear the noise first. And then in through the door comes like 12 teenage girls. And they're just like,
tall, like a herd.
You know, like talking over each other. It's just like, but it's very sweet to bear witness to also what conversation looks like at that age.
Yeah, that's so cute.
It's just so special.
Volleyball sensate babies.
I'm looking forward to this weekend. I think it's going to be really fun. How are you?
I was saying that my sleep is not quite what I'd like it to be these days. It's really difficult for me. Governor, this sleep is poop. I know now, like, my sleep is the place where, like, the news of the world shows up. Like, ooh. So I'll see something, or I'll see, you know, it's like, oh, they just bombed Lebanon, you know, and I will hold that all day, but then at night I'll lay down to go to sleep, and then that's when the grief will hit, or the concern or the worries will hit me, and I'm just like, oh, like my heart is breaking, and it's like in the nighttime, you know. And the other day, that news broke about the online rape academy, where like 62 million views of this
just in the month of February
website in the month of February. That's like training people on how to drug and rape their wives, girlfriends, or like women that they're out in the world with. And it's like reading the conversations, you know, of men talking about, oh, I want to make sure I get the dose right, and this and this and that. And they're like, I mean, it's just a whole, you know, horrifying. It keeps being like these things where it's like the things that, I mean, at least for my adult life, I feel like so much discourse has been around male loneliness and not all men, and like all these things trying to hold this space. And then stuff like this, or the Epstein files, comes out where it's like, they really have like a structural commitment to violence harming us, women. Hurting us, violence against women, violation. And that kept me up, you know, and just thinking about, in that case, like, there's just so many people who are like, I don't know what happened to me. I know something may have happened. You know, there's just so many people who are like, I don't know if my husband is one of those people, or if this happened, or whatever. And just holding rage, real rage around that. So that's been worrying my sleep time. And then, there's just been stuff going on there. You know, there's a lot of things happening right now. I'm like, I can't do anything about this.
Yeah.
Like, in the ways that I know how to do something, like there's no rescue, there's no quick solution. There's no like, let me handle that for you or whatever. It's just like, I have to be with this pain just like everyone else. And we have to, like, we actually don't quite know what to do yet. We're going to have to figure it out. We're going to have to use the rage and discontent and grief and everything else to like create pathways out of this time.
Yeah.
The thing that is saving my life right now is writing this book, because
yay,
I have to answer each issue with like, well, what would love have us do? And that question is always nourishing and grounding and slows me down. And it's just like, I have to be a human. I have to feel this. I have to shine light on what needs light shown upon it. So c'est moi. But I'm here.
Beautiful.
So, sister, we have a bunch of delicious questions, and I actually want to start out with one for us both, which is a beautiful question from our listener, McKenna. And it says, I am curious about the intersection of your sisterhood and this podcast. What has been your experience creating together for 7 years?
Wow.
Is it 7?
Has it? I feel like it's been more than 7. Wait, 2017.
2017 to 20.
It's been 9 years.
9 years. Okay, McKenna.
We're almost at 10. McKenna, we love you. It's okay.
We love you, McKenna. It's been a long time. So next year we have to do some kind of 10-year thing.
I think we do. I think we need to do like a 10-year tour.
Ooh. Okay, let's make it happen.
Let's do it.
I'll have my agent call your agent.
Good.
All right. So say, I can answer this a little and just say my experience of this has mostly been delight and joy and like gratitude that we have this space. And so there's a guarantee that I'm going to get to see and talk to you regularly. Like when we're in season, it's just like, oh, every Friday I'm going to get to have like a really amazing conversation with Autumn, and sometimes with others and sometimes just with Autumn. But it's just like, I get that built-in time to be with your brain, to be with your laughter. And I think it's grown us both, you know, like, I mean, life has grown us up during this almost decade of time. It has been serious almost 10 years. Serious. But I really feel like you and I have had to grow so much in the process of being able to, like, I know so deeply how you work. I understand so deeply what your strengths are, what you bring. I know what it's like when you're overwhelmed. Yeah. I know what it's like when we need to have a conversation that's not for the podcast before we have a conversation for the podcast. And like, there's just so much, just, it feels like it's really deepened our relationship as sisters. And it also feels to me like I'm so grateful this exists so that other people in the world who maybe don't have sisters or don't have great relationships with their sisters or siblings can start to figure out like, oh, this is what a really solid friendship looks like, a sisterhood. And you can recreate this with people in your life. And that's my hope, is always that people listen and they're like, I want that. And that it sort of plants the seed to sort of pursue like, I want that. I want to be in a lifelong conversation with someone who really knows me, can make fun of me, laugh with me, hold me accountable, cry with me, all the things. Those are some of my thoughts. What about you?
Yeah. I mean, co-sign to all of the above, everything you shared. And I think like if I'm thinking about like, what's the intersection between our sisterhood and this podcast? It's like one of the things that siblings have to do as they grow older is like differentiate from one another.
Yeah.
And differentiate like, and then like, I think ideally, if you're in a healthy relationship and trying to be in healthy relationship with the rest of your family, it's like as siblings, you're helping each other also differentiate from the past and be who you are in the present and not be, it's like you can, because like no one knows the things that are holding you in the past like your sibling does. Because you lived those things together, right? So it's like there's a way that you're like, that. Girl, you don't have to react to that because that's not what's happening anymore. I know what it is, but it's not what's happening anymore.
You're not 12, honey.
You know,
you're not 12 now.
You know, but it's like you're. I think in an ideal world, your siblings can like also hold you with a lot of care around that, and I think that's some of the things that you and I do for each other. It's like we're always able to, like, we'll be processing something in private, right?
Yeah.
Like, because as listeners may know, we like to talk to each other. So in addition to what we record together, we are also sister podcasting in private via voice memo notes on a regular basis. And so in the in our private relationship, right, we are regularly being like, oh, that thing that you're doing, I recognize that because I do it too, or I recognize it because it's something that was modeled to us when we were growing up, and here's, we're helping each other with that. And then I think that where that shows up in the show is like doing the show together has like the moments where we have had significant conflict around the show or within the show have been those moments where it's like pushing us to differentiate more as individuals, or have it be okay that we're different people. And because sometimes
breaks my heart every time, but I love it.
Well, it's like that. Like, I think that one of the places where we have struggled, when I think back to like what have been some of the like sources of conflict as we've recorded, is like where we struggle is when we realize that we have a different opinion than one another about a thing, and it's like it feels really like it feels edgy to disagree with each other, but it feels even more edgy maybe to disagree in front of other people. And there's like a risk that I think we both feel around that maybe we wouldn't feel if we weren't doing it in front of other people, right? And so I think that has been a place that's actually been such an area of growth. It's like grown us to be like, oh, it's okay that we don't agree about this, you know, because we are so aligned about so many things. And then when we find those places that we are not aligned around, or where it's like, I don't know, you know, it's
or I have a different take, or I would approach that a little differently.
Right.
You know, I want to bring in this question that another listener named Wag brought in this question, and I just want to bring it into the conversation and deepen in a little bit in this conflict place, because it's really good. So Wag says, I've read and reread the sister's interview in Loving Corrections. It's so powerful. I think it's April, our sister, who says something about a lack of conflict often signals a lack of intimacy.
Listen.
And can you say more about how you engage in conflict with each other? How do you hold differences of opinion and experience? What advice do you have for siblings who are raised to make things easy, meaning no fighting? I long for the explicitness and intimacy that the three of you have with my own siblings. So this ties in, right? Because I think that being in this podcast practice, there's things that in order to make things easy, or because I think we're also raised that way of like, you know, there's a positive thing here, or like, here's the silver lining, or like, you know, just like to keep it sweet, keep it nice. And I would say in our family, there's also a practice, which probably many of you are familiar with, where people will withhold things rather than bring them up if they think it'll cause conflict, or like mess up a visit, or, you know, mess up a conversation together.
Right.
And I feel like one of the things we've had to reckon with is like, it's actually going to bring us closer and make things deeper and better if we do address this thing. Like if something's coming up and we push through, or we, you know, so much of the work of conflict, especially at this level of intimacy is internal, where it's like, I'm wrestling with myself. I'm in my head. I'm building a narrative, building a story. And the thing I love is we have different stories. We're literally set in different positions. So our story of our family has these distinctions, these different perspectives that are, you know, like as the oldest daughter, there's a way that I see our parents and the way that I see our structure and the way I see my role in it. And then as my younger sister, you come in and you're like, I see it really differently. Right. I see my place differently. I see your place differently. You know, you think you're keeping the peace, but actually you're, you know,
instigating fights,
quiet, or instigating fights, or instigating embarrassment. And there's power dynamic stuff. You know, I think that one of the things that came up, I'd say in our first 3 years of doing the podcast, was the power dynamics that often go unspoken and unseen in a relationship, which we had to address, because it's like we're doing this shared piece of work. And so it's not just the power within our family, but now our power in the world. And like, how are we both holding power? How do we feel about it? You really helped me see that there's a way that I hold power that is like not, I don't see it. Right. Like I'm just sort of like,
which is the way power, being me. That's the way power works.
Exactly. Right. I'm like, I'm just being me. I'm just somehow like, oh, you know, like, I'm befuddled by why this is a challenge for you. Like when I just do it this way or whatever. Right. And you're just like, yeah, because you have all this power and people listen when you speak, or they think this or whatever. Right. And so you help me really. Now I'm constantly asking that question, you know, like someone will tell me something like, you know, one of the members of my team will be like, oh, I'll get that for you. And I have to slow it down and be like, do you actually have the capacity or the time to do that? Like, are you okay to do that? Are you overextending? Because I don't want you to do that. Right. Yeah. So what do I need to adjust? Because if I don't slow down, people will assume I want the product to be a certain way rather than the process. And for me, I'm like, oh, I actually really always care that the process feels like love and feels like home and goodness, you know, and feels like a place where you can be honest and say, girl, you messed up. This is not the right pace, or this is not the right, you know, idea. So I think that the thing I want to just say too is like, I don't want to idealize us. Like we still go through, as sisters, all three of us, we still go through cycles where it's like, one of us is off because life is pulling us too much or taking so much from us, or there's things we haven't spoken.
Yeah.
And so we do have to have those sister check-ins. We do have to have moments where we check, two of us will be like, girl, what is she on? Like, I think it's a great example.
Yeah.
Is like, as the occupation was happening in Minneapolis, like April and I had to sister converge and be like, okay, like, how are you understanding what's going on with Autumn? Here's what I'm understanding what's going on with Autumn. Like, how do we turn towards her right now and show up well for her right now? And we had to help each other to
And when Autumn is exhibiting her usual crisis behavior, which is like, if you can't get on board with supporting me, I'm not talking to you.
You're like, this train will leave your particular station because I will not. Exactly. Right. And each of us has, I think, a similar mode of like, if you're not, if you can't meet me where I am, I'm just like, meet me where I'm at.
Here
I'm
I
not
go.
going to talk to you. And then I'm like, okay, here's what we do to get Autumn talking to everybody again. But also to be like, yeah, we have different perspectives. Mm-hmm. And one thing that I feel like in my relationship right now, we're both Virgos, and one of our practices is like, we're both always right. We're just like, you're right and I'm right. We know we're both right. So how we move forward. And I feel like that's a lot of what I have to learn to be in relationship with y'all. That's a lot of what I have to bring into my ways of being with y'all, is that I'm like, you're not my baby sisters. I'm not correcting you with like the right way.
Right.
Like, I'm just like, y'all are grown women. You each have really distinct perspectives. And sometimes y'all are right. Occasionally,
Occasionally. Or it's like,
occasionally.
It's like, there's also the like, what's right for you. It's like,
yes.
There's like, I think one of the things that you and I have really learned to do over time is to recognize, like, under what conditions can I even give you advice? You know what I mean?
That's
it's
right.
Like,
I'm like,
like our lives are actual, like we have like maybe similar constitutions as people, but our lives are so different from one another that there are things where it's like, you'll be describing something to me and I'm like, yeah, I don't know, because I would never be in a situation like that. I don't know. And similarly,
like, for lovers, I don't
I'm just
know.
Like, I don't know. I don't have time to shower. So, it's like, I mean, now I do. Now I do that. My kids are teens, but I'm just saying,
especially with the diarrhea.
Back in the day, this girl could go a few days without showering because of toddlers. But I mean, like, and you would, and similarly, like there have been moments where I know I've had to be like, record scratch, like the thing that you're saying has no bearing on my reality. And I feel like we've learned to do that with more grace and over time of just recognizing that, like, we are all from the same family. We might have similar constitutions and similar, I would say, like, landscapes of reactivity, like my ecology of the things that I'm going to be reactive to is pretty similar to yours, but the actual conditions of my life and the things that I have to make decisions about are different than the landscape of your life and the things you have to make decisions about. And I think that we've learned, especially between you and I, we have really learned how to make an offer that is like, okay, here's just what I can see from my vantage point. And I know that I don't see so much of what's actually going on here.
Yeah, like I think we've had to really learn how to let go of the need for the person to take our advice as gospel in any way. Like, and I think that's important because for both of us, I feel like in other parts of our world, we're someone who people will turn to and be like, what do you think? And they'll be like, yes, that is the great thought. What you just, whatever, what. And with our sisters, I'm like, what do you think? And they're like, bitch, you don't know that. That don't make no sense. Like, and I'm just like, oh, okay, you're right. I'm not a mom. Like, whatever it is, I don't know. Or to assert ourselves and be like, yeah, I don't know that, but I do know this. I feel like we're able to give each other like perspective. One of my favorite things that siblings can do is pick up on patterns where I'm like, I noticed that you keep having this same kind of conflict. We keep having the same kind of conflict.
You keep ending up with the same type of person.
Yes, right. I was like, I can see your pattern in a way that, and April can see my pattern. Like, it's interesting, right? It's like when you reflect something back to me, we're like, well, girl, you do that. And I'll be like, I didn't know I did that. But now that you say it, and it's so great because I'm like, wow, am I at this big age and I still have these shadow spots, right?
Yeah.
And I love that. To me is one of the reasons not just for siblings, but like deep relationship. Like it's like the kind of conflicts that happen there really help you see yourself and really help you be intentional. So
yeah,
thank you for those questions, y'all. Those were doozy goods.
Doozy goods.
Doozy goods. All right, sister. The next question I want to ask is for you. I would love, this is from Caroline, I would love to hear more about the a theologian part of Autumn's bio. It's very intriguing.
It is intriguing, isn't it?
It is intriguing.
It's funny.
Share a little about that.
Thank you, Caroline, for that question. It's funny because I've realized that maybe I've introduced myself this way for so many years, but never actually gone into any depth with our audience about what this means. So
what is she doing over there in that theologian part?
To reveal myself, so I studied theology. That was like the subject that I studied most intensively in both as a part of my bachelor's degree, but also in the continuing education that I pursued after college. And probably most of our listeners wouldn't know this about me, but I am a biblical languages nerd. I studied biblical Greek. I studied biblical Hebrew, and I studied Coptic. And so I never had any facility for learning languages that are spoken, but I turned out I had a lot of facility for learning languages that are not spoken and that are quote unquote dead or ancient languages.
I was going to say, some people say they're dead.
Some people say they're dead. I would say they're just alive in a different way.
They're alive in a Bible somewhere.
They shape every aspect of our lives. When I left college, when I graduated, I graduated with an intent to shortly return and pursue like a master's of divinity. Like that is the path that I thought I was on in my early 20s. Yeah. But once I got a taste of like life out.
Can I pause you there? Mm-hmm. When you were on that path, when you were pursuing that, what were you thinking your life would be? Like when you had, once you had a master's of divinity, like what was the path? Were you hoping to become a preacher or?
No, I imagined my life. I imagined a life that was inside the academy. I think I was really imagining, I had been at Sarah Lawrence College. I had done my year of study abroad at Oxford University. I was continuing my education at General Theological Seminary in New York City. And I was working at the theological library at General. That was like one of my first jobs out of college. And I had also spent a summer working in the archives here in Minnesota at the Hill Museum and Manuscript Library at St. John's University. So I had done all this like archival work. I was like there was this whole other path that I was on. And
exactly.
And I was really particularly interested in like the early desert mothers and fathers, like the mystical early part, or mystical and anarchic early history of the Christian church before it became a part of empire. And so that was like my sort of special area of study and special area of interest. And I really thought that was going to be what I was going to be pursuing professionally. Then I got a taste of like life beyond the institution of college. And I realized that I had actually kind of, trauma is such a strong and like kind of well-worn word at this point. Yeah. But I think I had some really awful things happen to me when I was at Sarah Lawrence. And so, specifically along the lines of race. And so I think once I was outside of that environment, I realized that I needed to stay outside of it. And, but my pursuit of what I would call the study of belief and sort of like the ontological interest in like how do we as humans understand who and what we are and our relationship to source, our relationship to divinity, our relationship to like one of the things I say in my book, which is very much a book about spiritual practice. One of the things I say,
which is coming soon.
But one of the things I say in my book is that spiritual practice is an intact experience of reality. That's what spiritual practice is. And I have really made a life of studying that, even if I haven't been doing it inside of formal institutions or in a formal role. And what's been really interesting.
And just so people know, that book is called Temper.
The book is called Temper, Practicing Freedom in an Unfree World. We'll drop the link to pre-order in the show notes.
Yay.
But last year I was invited to be the guest host of another podcast called Climate Changed that is all about spiritual leadership in a climate changing world. And it was really beautiful, like at this time in my life where I really am stepping into my calling as a spiritual teacher. It was really beautiful to get to kind of like take on a more formal role of like talking about this in public. And I think that it will be something I'm doing just more and more in my life in the coming years, about really like claiming this in public, claiming my role as spiritual teacher in public, and having it not just be like a little line, a little hint in my bio, but like an actual thing that people can kind of see and make sense of.
Yay.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Thank you, Caroline. What a sweet question.
Thank you, Caroline.
Yeah.
Okay. I just saw this first question. Lucia asked us about facilitation, like what facilitation books and stuff. So real talk, what facilitation books, training, YouTube educational stars do you love and recommend? I'm struggling to find resources that resonate. And I'll just quickly say, I wrote a book called Holding Change. I stand by it. It's the way it is. I mean, it's about how to do emergent strategy facilitation. And we're actually about to launch a website to go along with it. It sort of will be a website with all the different tools that I've ever made it'll include facilitation training, like a virtual facilitation training that you can do on your own time, mediation training, stuff like that. So I really do stand by that work. And I don't watch YouTube education stuff or a lot of stuff like that. But I will say the one thing I love online is there's shit facilitators say.
Oh my God.
It's like
the best.
It's like an Instagram account, I think, or TikTok account, but it makes fun of facilitation, but I think it also is like just this delightful, like self-awareness space for facilitators to be in.
It really is.
And then Paris Hatcher, like Black Feminist Futures, was doing a facilitation training for a while that was Inka Muhammad and Makani Themba, two of our friends that were offering that. So that might be a place to search. Are there any things you want to uplift there, Autumn?
Well, you know what's funny? The book that's coming to my mind, and I kind of hesitate to make this recommendation because I don't know how this book has aged. But I'll just say, so that's my caveat is I haven't reread this book in 20 years, but
right. It could be like the Grease of facilitation books.
Right, where you're like, oh no, but
oh dear.
I can share the facilitation book that most deeply shaped me in my early 20s as a facilitator was this book called Sitting in the Fire. The subtitle is Large Group Transformation Using Conflict and Diversity. It's by Arnold Mindell, who is like one of the founders of process work. And again, I can't say for sure whether this book has aged well. It was written in the 90s, I think. And so I'm sure it's got stuff in it that is questionable. But there's a lot of ideas that I was introduced to, particularly the way that Mindell writes about and thinks about rank and power in facilitation. That really was supportive for me in understanding how to navigate power dynamics with grace and not also relate to power or rank as something that's static, but rather something that is like incredibly fluid and changes depending on the context and depending on the composition of people in the room. And I think that orientation carried me through a particularly rigid time. Like the last 20 years of movement, we've been in a lot of rigidity around identity and power in our movement spaces. And I think that having that precursor to that time really helped me navigate this like kind of cultural moment that was really defined by a lot of rigidity around identity.
Excellent.
Yeah. That's my I think I recommend it.
I think so. Sounds like you do. You know, and I know that these are slightly different things, but the Embodiment Institute has a really beautiful thing on just like grounding and centering into your own soma, into your body. And I actually think like one of the best tips or tools for any facilitator is to know how to do that, to really be able to reliably land into your body and into awareness from the body outward and tune into what's happening around you. So
there you go.
Those are some places to look.
Right. Should I read this longer question?
Yeah. Take us there.
From Olivia. Hello, Adrienne and Autumn. Hey,
wow,
Olivia.
She's yelling. Okay.
I am so grateful for you both. You bring so much clarity, wisdom, and nuance so needed in our movements and our time. Hey. In this vein, I was wondering about any advice you have for navigating your work in the world, how you found your most authentic and most helpful offering, and how you found your way to bring that forth. Sometimes the world feels so overwhelming with so many crises. I have a lot of ideas and now have some more knowledge and skills, but it's difficult to know which path to take in such a complicated world and where to be most helpful. I see you both as people who have found beautiful ways to bring forth your full creativity, visions, and work that transform both yourselves and your communities. Thank you so much.
Oh, Olivia. Well, thank you for asking us. You know, it feels like that's always one of those beautiful things where it's like, oh, I guess I am doing all right with my life.
Yeah.
So I'm like, yeah.
Not bad. Not bad at all.
Not bad. Someone's asking me about it. So I would say for me, so much of how my life has moved has been like moving towards things that make me feel more aliveness and letting my aliveness lead. So, you know, I started out in movement work as a young, early 20s. I got my first job in something that would say a movement job. And there was an initial feeling. Yeah. Harm Reduction Coalition. And with Harm Reduction Coalition, with the League of Young Voters, with the Ruckus Society, like with each of these spaces, there was something that really drew me towards it. And that felt like, wow, I'm going to learn something here. These people are cool. Like I want to change the world with these people.
Yeah, the coolness
and
factor
then
is
each
real.
Thing, coolness or like the attraction, right? Just feeling like I'm attracted to that. I can feel myself. I want to move towards that way of thinking or that way of being. Those people seem free. There's almost always some freedom in it where I'm like, those people are like free. They're critiquing the system. They're offering something tangible to it. Those things really moved me. But then inside of it, there was another part of me that I think was already the facilitator and already the writer part of me. So I would be in those spaces, like loving parts of it, but also really feeling some resistance or some critique or something in me that was like, something about this needs to shift. And I would always do as much shifting as I could within those structures. But for me, like when the structure fell away and it was like, you just are a facilitator, just be a facilitator and like go to where people need that. That was liberating because then all of a sudden it was like, I actually can follow my internal guidance and my spiritual guidance, I can feel my divine gift is being able to, it's like letting my wings spread all the way open and be like, here's what I have to offer. And for a while, it was just so nourishing to do that. And then there was an end of that as well. There was a period where I got to where I was like, oh, right. And who knows, that may come back around. But there reached a place where I was like, I just want to write about this stuff. I want to write about how we are and how we be. I want to sing about how we are. I want to pray about it. Like something else emerged. And so I offer that because I'm like, I think that the path is nonlinear and I think that we change as we go. And the old model for making your way in life was like picking a career, like by the time you were like 19 and just locking in and working all the way through till retirement in that one path and going as high as you could or whatever. And even that was a very masculine, it was like, that's how men made their lives. And then women were, given access to the workplace and we're trying to follow the same thing. I think now we're in a shifting period where nothing is stable and nothing is permanent. And there's no assumption that anything's going to stay the same for the length of a whole career necessarily. And so being able to stay in touch with like, what makes you feel alive and understand that it's going to change. And as you gain skills, as you find new pathways and perspectives, like something else might become available. Like I was noticing that all the people who were on the Artemis trip around the moon were like 47 to 50 years old.
Hell yeah.
Right? And I'm just like, oh, I'm sure that they've been ups and downs and diversions along the path of like, is NASA even funded anymore? Like, what's going on? And still, like, there was something in each of those people that was like, I'm supposed to be up in space, flying around the moon and being a poet for the stars. Like, that's, there's something calling. Yeah, I think those are the things. And I also say sometimes your path includes disruption. And like for me, there are definitely things where I got there and I was like, this isn't working. And part of my job here is to just shine a light on that.
Yeah.
But I've always been really cautious of, I'm not disrupting something I'm not willing to fix. And I'm not willing to stay and do some work, some labor around. And I think that that's one of the things that I wish more people who are coming into movement and coming into these spaces now had in mind. That it's like, if you show up and you can see what's not working, can you commit to being a part of helping make it work? Because I have several projects in my back pocket now that I'm like, I really made that thing so much better. I was a part of a group of people that really did labor together to try to make that thing more solid, more functional, more diverse, more empowering, more accountable, and I'm really proud. Like when I look back at those projects, I'm like, I love seeing the work that they're doing in the world. I love the facilitation I got to do. And now I really love my boring little life where I spend a ton of time on my porch looking at ducks and writing about love. Mm-hmm. It's just like all of these things, And I love having the freedom that I have now to say whatever I need to say about how fucked up the world is and to offer my solutions.
Yeah.
That's a big part of my path, and I think that's probably a lot of people's path right now has to be speaking the truth. So, what about for you,
that
sister?
Part. Well, I feel like I can't really answer this question without like kind of maybe just for my own sake, but also for the sake of our asker, contextualizing like why we even have these kinds of questions, which is like, it's I think the question or the confusion around like how do I bring my gifts into the world is so much a function of our society not being an intact society. And that's the fact that like, it's not clear what our roles are in a society that works the way ours does, where like all of our time is commodified. We're constantly being asked to think about our lives and our time in terms of what its value is.
Yes.
And like, there's a difference, I think, between like thinking about like, how do I have purpose or how do I live into my purpose versus like, how do I do things that are of value, right?
Yes,
and
how to make a living and be of value to a community,
right?
And all those things.
So I think like in an intact society, we would be like receiving lineage, we would receive lineage and that would let us know how to be in our purpose in our social context. And I think that like, that is the kind of thing that I wouldn't, if it weren't for like the discipline of practice that I have through Aikido and being a part of a martial arts community, I don't think I would know that in the same way. But like, I have a vocation that is like both, it's about me, but it's also about my community, and it's about receiving and preserving a lineage that goes back so far that I can't even see the origin of it. And that lets me know that so much of the time that I spent in my life feeling like, or no, I shouldn't assign that to myself. I have not spent a lot of time in my life feeling confused about my purpose, but the ways that I see people often feeling confused about their purpose or confused about like how to put that into action, I think is often, it's actually more a function of the way that our society like has us so disconnected from lineage. So I just wanted to name that like for anyone who's feeling this sort of like, I don't know how to be, I would say like find a discipline, honestly. Find a discipline of practice where you could be like receiving lineage, because it I think it like helps make sense. Have a vocation that is not connected to earning is actually a really important part of making sense of life.
That's right.
And
that's right.
So for me, I haven't had a lot of confusion. I think I've been very lucky in that I have mostly gotten to do work where I really felt like in my purpose. And I think that the thing that I have maybe struggled more with is like the disconnect between, what I feel called to do versus like, what am I good at versus like, what is it that other people want from me, you know? And
wait, sister, right there. I was about to say, I literally have a tool called the sweet spot tool.
Yes.
And it's like a little triangle of those things, right?
Totally.
Where it's like, what am I good at? What am I willing to develop mastery in? Like, what am I willing to pursue and actually become steeped and great at? And then what does my community and the world actually need from me?
Right. And I think that like,
but
there's
capitalism.
Right. Well, and capitalism is such an influencer on particularly the like, what am I good at and what do people want from me? And, you know, and so I think that was like for me and the way I always talk about it is like turning the ship of my life back towards making art. One of the things that I had to do in that moment was really discern and decide that regardless of whether anyone else, like so many people in my life didn't even know that I was a musician. You know what I mean?
Weird.
That's not how people, they were like, oh yeah, Autumn sings when she facilitates, but people didn't necessarily, no one knew that I was like an artist necessarily at my core. And I had to make that distinction for myself of like, well, I know that I am actually called to make art and have art be at the center of my life. And that means walking away from relationships where people perceive me as, well, this is the thing that you do, Autumn, because this is the thing that you're really good at. And that's what we want you to do. And that's what we will make room for. And I had to really be like, oh, well, that's not who I am. And so that's not what I'm doing. And I've been very, you know, there's risk with that, enormous risk. A friend of mine recently though, and I don't know if this will be helpful, Olivia, for you, or for anyone else, but a friend of mine recently gave me this advice around decision-making that was like, if you are trying to think of reasons not to do something, that is a sign you should do it. And if you are trying to think of reasons to do something, that's probably a sign that you shouldn't.
Oh, I love that.
And I think he heard it. I think he got it from a podcast. I don't know the origin of this advice, but
it probably came from our podcast.
I don't think so. But it probably came from like, it honestly probably came from one of those like biohacking tech bro podcasts. But, you know, they're everywhere. There's a gem sometimes that floats to the top in those contexts, but
a broken clock is right twice a day.
Exactly. But anyway, so I just offer that as like, if you're struggling with the, like, what do I do? Then maybe reflect on like, what is it that you're actually feeling pulled towards? And is there something that you're feeling pulled towards, but you're trying to convince yourself not to go there? Because maybe that's the thing to go take the risk. Go closer.
Yeah. I love that. And I think the only thing I'll add to it is really pay attention to your well-being in the space or in the situation. And like, can you take care of yourself? Can you rest? Can you connect? Do you feel like there's people there, you know, like the people you're working with, whoever you're on the path with, collaborating with, whatever it is, you're spending the majority of your living, waking hours, right, with those people. And a lot of our jobs, a lot of our, you know, whatever work we're doing, they're going to shape who you become. So if you go into a space and you're like, I really can't feel my humanity or anyone else's humanity here. I don't feel like I can advocate for myself. This is stressful. It overflows the container every time. I constantly feel like I have to sublimate my actual instincts and my humanity, or all that kind of stuff. You think you can protect yourself in those spaces, but it's actually really hard. They seep into you. They start to shape you. You start to feel that fragility become a part of your personality. You know, I've seen this happen with so many groups where this is just an unhealthy, toxic environment. Now everyone thinks that they are bad people or like dysfunctional or whatever. And I'm like, no, it's like I think more and more of us have to find the ways to support each other to say no to those things.
Mm-hmm.
I think we are at a precipice with capitalism right now where a lot of people are like, this shit is not working, burn down this warehouse. And I love that. Like that also is a part of our purpose, right? That your path might be saying a hell no to capitalism. But it's also not just from a idealistic place. It's like, it actually, and maybe we should do a whole other episode just on this. You have to be savvy and community grounded and community rooted in order to make those kind of stances. Like I have walked away from so much money in my life because my stance was more important to me, but also because I had community that would back me. I had other people who were like, look, we can't pay you what they're going to pay you, but we'll pay you something. And your heart will be nourished. And you won't have to fight with us. You won't have to fight with our secret board of 1% rapist people or whatever it is to do justice, right? So
that part.
All right. Thank you, Olivia, for this question.
That part.
So sibling, we have a little pair of questions that I think are super sweet.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like they go together. Actually, no, before we go there, I want to go down to this other question and then come back to those two as our last ones.
Okay.
Does that feel okay? So the other one, because this one is really for you, and I'm curious about it too. So Michelle asks, well, first she says, they say, endlessly grateful for y'all, heart, 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 and heart. How do we keep building with each other for the long term after crisis shifts, like with Metro Surge? How do we keep turning towards each other for what we need rather than towards the systems that are collapsing?
Oh,
that just felt connected to that last piece. And
yeah,
I want to hear what comes up for you as someone who's on the ground in that space.
Well, one of my, a dear friend of mine who lives here in Minneapolis as well, we were just kind of bemoaning what feels like the just grief in the aftermath that has to do with the way that we all felt so close and on top of each other and right next to each other. Mm-hmm. And it was easier to, in many ways, was easier to ask for support and get supported by neighbors and community in the midst of the crisis. And now that the crisis has shifted, it's feeling harder again to ask for support and trust that people will be responsive. And, there's grief in that. And also, I've been holding in mind some wisdom that one of our elders, Susan Raffo, who's also based here in Minneapolis, shared in a recent event that it's really important to take breaths. And I think that as the crisis here was unfolding, there was a simultaneous sense of I can speak for myself, and I know other people felt this way. A simultaneous sense of this is the worst, scariest thing that many of us have lived through. And also we've never felt more alive and connected and closer to each other. And this is we're also feeling like we're on the edge of something. And then I think there was a felt sense of at some point this is going to change. And what if we lose this feeling? Fear of loss, fear of the grief that we are now in, of right, the feeling shifted, and now there is a sort of, it's after any crisis where it's you're not really actually back to normal, but there is some resumption of business as usual that happens.
Yes.
And I've been holding in mind the wisdom I heard from Raffo, the wisdom I heard from other elders recently, like Julia Bennett, who's based in New York City, folks who have just been in it for a much longer time and have seen these waves crash over us many times. Just remind us that the wave does crash. There's an aftermath. There's a time period in which all you're doing is laying on the sand and just breathing and being oh, I made it through. I'm alive now.
Yes.
Yes. I'm still alive. And actually that rest period, we're not actually backtracking. We're just resting and reorienting to what the new landscape is. And and I said this as the occupation was at its height, and I'm having to remind myself of it now, right? That the reason why Minneapolis was able to respond in the way that it did during the crisis of Metro Surge was because we had already been through the uprising of 2020.
Right.
And so when the next crisis comes, there will be something completely different that we are capable of doing as a result of what just happened. And
that's right.
So while it feels griefy, feels like grief to be in this moment where it's like we're not feeling the closeness to each other that we were feeling. We're actually integrating. That's what's happening is we are integrating what we just learned. It's quiet. Right. Integration is very quiet. And the lesson that we are integrating will become apparent to us when we are called into action at the next round of this, which we know the rounds are going to keep coming. I was telling someone where I lived in Minneapolis and they were like, oh my God, you live right in the middle of the ... And I was like, everything. Yes. Mm-hmm. The epicenter. Yes. And that is where we are. And the epicenter is going to keep shifting also. Like the front line, the shore is everywhere now. And so that's what I would offer is like, the question is, how do we keep building with each other? My answer is allow for integration to happen.
That's very wise. Mm-hmm. That's super wise, my sister. I think the words that were coming up, I always say that birds coast when they can. Like there's a real sense of also like repair and recovery. It's like how to build with that in mind, that it's like, oh yeah, like we can sit and make meaning of this right now, but also we need to rest our systems down a little too. Mm-hmm. Like this thing is intense. And as you said, and I think as we're all aware of, we're not in a place right now where the crisis ends, right? We're not in a place where it's like, oh, and this is done. And so we can fully, it's like, no, it's continuing, but attention has moved on. Right. And like the acute sense of being the epicenter has moved on, but like the things still go. the things are still going, which
we're
means
just at the beginning
there are still
of
people
this.
who are responding.
We're just at the beginning of this. Yes. Mm-hmm. And we have to have to remember that the Francis Weller long dark kind of framing is like we are at the beginning of this ending.
That's right.
Things are going to get much. Right. Someone was saying to me the other day, my friend, one of my colleagues, Vanessa, was saying to me, I think we should just act like everything that happens in Parable of the Sower is about to happen. And I was like, exactly.
It's happening.
Is already happening or is about to happen. Like anything that was written into Parable of the Sower, Parable of the Talents. And I was like, yep, that's true.
Yeah. And I think it's also like, that helps us to not like wallow in cynicism, but really be able to, it's because I also think of like, I always turn to like, what do Indigenous leaders, Indigenous peoples who have lived through many rounds of this know? What do Palestinians know and Lebanese folks know? Like folks who are like, there's a beginning of part of this, and then there's something that's been going on for as long as we can remember. Yes. And we live in the intersection of time in that way. Yes. And there's a way that it's like, stop waiting for like one big whoosh, this is going to make it all different right now. And just be like, I've got to keep showing up for the next round and the next round and the next round. And I really have found this is helping me tamp down the part of me that is like, wants a quick solution and wants a purist solution that's like, and then we had socialism everywhere and everyone just understood that we love the earth and like, right? I'm like, that's not how humans have worked so far. So far it's been culturally, we're shifting each other. Culturally, we're grabbing these moments and moving something. And like right now there's a front line for climate. There's a front line around immigration and migration that is connected to climate and connected to capitalism. There's a front line around men and rape culture. There's these front lines that are massive and that are undoing everything, but it's not the first time. It won't be the last time. So it's like, I think connecting back to that question that Olivia had, it's like also like, what is your path in the great turning? What is your path in the long dark? Like whatever it is you're doing for your job, what is the thing underneath that that is like, I have a purpose in what's changing in the world.
Yeah. And like last thing I'll say about this, but just the next thing I'll say about this, that I really appreciate this last piece you said, because it's like, any innovation, anything we look back on historically that was a major innovation that changed the entire world.
Yes.
It started with one person or a few people, or it everything takes time. Like I think back about like writing. It's not like writing started and then it was everywhere all at once.
Nope.
Right? It's like it actually slowly changed the world. It slowly changed the world. Slowly. So whatever it is that's happening
and for such a long time,
now,
people are like, oh, I can't read. So you might be, I was just seeing something about this the other day where they were like, oh yeah, when Black people first started writing, they had to write for a white audience because Black people largely still couldn't read. And so it was like, oh, first you have to write for the white gaze. And then, you know, Toni Morrison had that big aha, wait a second, after reading all these African authors who were like, I don't write for the white gaze and you don't have to either. Like enough Black people read now that you can stop doing that. And it's like, oh yeah, like I think right now so much, you know, we've been really thinking about the male gaze, the white gaze, the capitalist gaze. These are the gazes that we've been looking through. Now something else is opening up to us. It's like,
and we don't
have to look through that anymore.
We don't
know yet what's happening, what it feels like to look through our own eyes, but we're learning.
We don't even know what's happening.
Yeah. All right. Beautiful. Okay. Do you want to read these last two?
So for Megan, my middle name, we have a question. I think for many of us, it feels difficult to talk and think about joy right now in this time of incredible grief and collapse. But at the same time, joy also feels deeply necessary. I'd love to know what is something that is bringing each of you even the tiniest flicker of joy right now. And then from Glenn, we have, love you too. We love you too, Glenn.
Love you back.
Here's my question. In these dark times, where do you see the light coming from? What are you seeing that gives you hope? Whether it be examples of a different way of organizing ourselves, our community economically, politically, and or courageous on the ground leadership, getting the practical done with love.
Beautiful questions.
Love it.
Yeah, so I can say a few things. Tiniest flickers of joy. I actually experience great flickers of joy. I'm a real like joy fiend. And I will say some of the things recently that have given me joy. I think you all know that the Artemis moon journey gave me a lot of joy.
That was a big
one.
It
was complex because I'm like, I know that it's a mission coming from the United States going into space. And I know that there's all this like space colonization stuff. And, you know, like, I was like, what's going on? I know all of that. And yet the people who are actually part of the mission and the sensibility, the orientation, the way they were speaking about what they were seeing, the way they were inviting us into the overview effect, inviting us to see ourselves not through the lens of nation, but through the lens of globe, of species,
lifeboat.
Lifeboat, one thing altogether. That gave me a lot of joy. And it also gave me a lot of hope. And it gave me a sense of there's just humans who are still pursuing great things and pursuing something for the whole, right? And it really made it dwarf I was like, oh, the people who want bad, the people who want things to be destructive and horrible and all that is such a small group of people. And they have a lot of power, but there's just they're not the majority of people on earth, of people alive, of people who've ever lived. And that always gives me hope to remember like, oh, like the majority of people want to love each other, care for each other, raise their families, have some hope, feel togetherness, etc. And if we can break through the stories of separateness and difference, we can get at those things. So that gives me joy. The other day, my nibbling came over, who is 4.5 years old, and she is just delightful. Like, she's such good company. She's so smart and interesting. And like, anytime I'm interacting with my nibblings, I'm in a place of real joy. And also like, they give me hope, a hopeful perspective. They give me a sense of like, oh, right. Like, I'm looking at the world through my lens of what we have and what's been taken and what's changed and all these things. But you're looking at the lens with pure possibility. I'm fascinated by everything. Yes, I think I could, like, we were having a talk about breakdancing because I was like, do you think you could spin on your head? And she was like, yes, if you hold my feet and spin me, I absolutely can. And
Yeah.
it was like, oh yeah.
With support, I could do anything.
Yeah. I mean, like if you do it, I can do it, you know? And I was like, great, let's do that then. And I always feel like with children, I'm like, yeah, how do I access that again? Right. Or if I think, can I do something where I'm like, the answer is like, yes, with support, I can do anything.
Yeah.
You know, with community, I can do anything. So that has been giving me a lot of light. And then I always have to trouble the question when people say these are dark times. I'm like, these are pale times. I really want to hold that this is like, darkness is the beautiful place. Darkness is the womb. Darkness is where new things are birthed. And I definitely think in that way, there's a darkness in this time, right? Where I'm like, there's a lot of possibility in this time. There's a lot. I mean, it doesn't sound joyful. It's not joyful, but it does make me feel hopeful that so much is coming into the light right now. That so much is being brought, you know, it's like you might be a bad person, but you're not going to be doing that without everyone knowing that you're a bad person right now, right? You're like, we're pointing fingers, we're naming names, we are calling folks in, we are saying, even if you're Cesar Chavez, even if you're someone that we have looked up to or held in a certain account, we're going to hold the wholeness of your humanity here, and we're going to say that that's not okay. That's not acceptable. And so we're going to look around at the people in movement now and be like, that's not okay. Yeah. It gives me hope that we're building that muscle of being able to be like, it's chaotic. I mean, it is chaotic to be pointing the fingers at everything bad and being like, oh my gosh, there's so much. But it makes me feel hopeful. I think that when I was younger, I thought our job was to resolve all these issues in our time. Now I'm starting to be like, I think that our job is to really shine the light on them and like practice as much as we can to resolve them. But we're still in the bringing the light to the table moment.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes we get confused because we jump ahead of ourselves and we're like, why isn't this resolved yet? It's like, we still need everyone to see it. We still need everyone to understand what they're looking at. When you're looking at something like 62 million people looking at a website on raping people, we need you to understand what you're seeing. When you're looking at something like the Epstein files and all the redacted lines, we need you to understand what you're looking at. What is it that you are looking at? Lebanon, when you look at us going to war with Iran, when you look at these things, do you understand what you're seeing? If you don't, we're going to make it clear to you. And it gives me hope that so many people in so many places are whistleblowing in their own lives.
Whistleblowing reality.
This is a whistleblowing time, right? It's a time to just be like, look, you know, what is it James Baldwin said? Like, not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced. Like, I'm like, we're in that zone where it's like nothing can be changed until we actually start to truck with reality. And I think that's where we are, and that gives me hope. Sister, what about you? Tiniest flicker of joy.
I'll tell you what gave me a flicker of joy yesterday. Yeah. I was about to go pick up my youngest child, who was 13, and was hanging out with some friends. And I looked at her location on Find My, and she wasn't where I thought she should be. And I texted her, and I was like, why are you in such and such place? What are you doing? And she wrote back, we're vaping.
Wait.
Because she knows that like one of my biggest fears is that she and her friends are like in a park vaping. And because because that's the kind of mom that I am, right? So she just texted me. She texted me, we're vaping. And then when I picked her up a little bit later, she was like, did you like my joke? And I was just like, I want to kill you. But that gave me a flicker of joy, because I'm just like, yeah, the thing that I'm doing is what my mom did, is what her mom did, is what, like, I just feel connected to all moms across time. And I feel my child to be connected to all teenagers across time. Like, there's just something that's so in keeping with what we are supposed to be doing, that I am afraid and she's making fun of me for it. It just feels like that's exactly, and like the fact that very, very, very normal human thing is happening in a context where like a lot of other things feel abnormal, or we don't know, we're off the map. We don't know what the map is anymore, but it's like, but actually there's a lot of stuff that's just going to be the way that it always is. Like teenagers are always going to make fun of their parents, and the parents are always going to be worried for them. And
there's good norms.
It's like the lifeboat element of like, of what the Artemis 2 mission reminded us, that like, everything that's happening here on our lifeboat is absolutely on course with what humanity is and does and what Earth is and does. And like it's, and there's nothing that's happening on our lifeboat that is like in a great spiritual sense. This is what I mean. Like in the greatest spiritual sense, there is like nothing that's happening that isn't quote unquote supposed to be happening. It's all a part of the miracle of Earth. Like everything that we do is a part of the miracle of Earth. And so it's like you can feel that at the grand scale of like folks swinging around the moon and looking back on us and being like, damn, we're so lucky. And then you can also feel it at the like micro level of like a 13-year-old making fun of her mom via text message. It's like, oh, I'm so lucky that I get to have this experience of my 13-year-old, like, you know, kind of making fun of me for my fears over her doing something that she would never do. You know what I mean? It's like, it's all part of it.
That's very beautiful, sister. I love having this conversation with you. We did have one other question that we are going to do a whole episode about. So we had a question about, can we do a sister interview for the Lineages of Change tarot deck? And like, yes, absolutely.
We totally will. So thank you for that idea.
I'm not sure how. Yeah. So we are going to make that happen. So thank you, Krista. It's going to happen. I feel really satisfied with this.
Ask us. It was great. We obviously, we don't get to everyone's questions. We can't get to everyone's questions, but we're grateful for all of the questions that we were asked. And it was a delight to get to answer them.
It really was. It really was. And we'll keep doing more.
Okay.
Sending y'all so much love. It's like, I sound like Channy. So much love, many blessings.
Many blessings. I'm your podcast bestie.
I'm your podcast. We're your podcast. We're your podcast besties. And we love you so much.
Thanks for listening to our show. We're on Instagram at End of the World PC.
You can make a sustaining donation to our show at our Patreon, which is patreon.com/endoftheworldshow.
Another thing you can do to help our show sustain itself is to write us a review on Apple Podcasts if you're an iPhone person. This helps people looking for good new content to find our shit.
How to Survive the End of the World is produced and edited by the quirky and adorable Zach Rosen. Transcripts are in our show notes and on our website at endoftheworldshow.org. And we send a special thanks to Samira Abdurrahman for all the help that she provides.
So much help. Thank you, Samira.
So much help.
Music for today's show comes from Tunde Alaniran and Autumn, the band.
Bye.
Bye.